Gilbert. So, in thinking about this video, there's one memory in particular that stands out for me, and I think actually it's one that maybe other people don't know about. Um, so, you had the, shall we say, dubious honor to be witness to my rather disastrous attempt at becoming a high jumper in the ninth grade. And I was not a good high jumper at all. But I remember one meet in particular. You were the official for the high jump, and Heather Bean had gone right before me, and she ran and she was amazing and like this beautiful porpoise leaping over the bar. And she got high marks for it and so forth. And then it was my turn. And I had paced off the distance and checked the number I'd written on my shoe and all the things you're supposed to do. And I took a run at the bar, and I remember noticing you standing there next to the bar. And I jumped into the air, and I came down directly butt first, sitting on the bar, and it kind of like boinged down and then shot me into the air like a slingshot. And the bar fell off, and I didn't get any credit. And I remember, of course, being embarrassed and climbing out of the mat and seeing you had your back turned and your shoulders were shaking. And I realized that you were laughing. And in a moment when I suppose a 15-year-old girl might have been just mortified, seeing you laugh at what was obviously an incredibly ridiculous situation, it made me laugh. And I realized that, it was okay to be ridiculous, and it was okay to fail and to look just silly. And it was okay to laugh at myself when I did fail. And I remember you turned around and you were smiling, and I'm sure you were trying so hard not to laugh. But you looked at me and you said, "It's okay." You said, "Why don't you go back and try it again?" And I'm sure that was not allowed in the rules. I don't know. But I went back and I tried again, and I ran and I crashed right into the bar, and I didn't get any points. But that's always stuck with me because, there's a lot of things in life that we're not very good at. And I spend a lot of time nowadays, trying to help kids understand that it's okay to fail at things, and it's okay to laugh at yourself, and it's okay to get up and try it again. Even when trying one more time maybe isn't always the way it's done. And that's been a really important thing. And so that moment stands out for me. Not of being laughed at, but of being shown that it's okay to laugh at yourself and to try again. And along with that, I will also say that I believe you were also the referee or the official who was there to witness the one and only time when I did in fact get over the bar in the high jump. So that was a big deal too. And I just wanted you to know that has stuck with me. And that one strange little moment in the middle of a huge ninth grade track meet made a big difference to 15-year-old me, but to also the person that I've become today. So thank you for that.
Hey, Mr. Gilbert, this is Rob O'Connor. I'm actually over here in Germany right now. I'm stationed here for the next 120 days. We're kind of overseeing operations in Africa for my guys that are on the ground. It's actually pretty boring, if you ask me. I'm working like 12 to 13-hour days, 7 days a week. So even though I'm in Germany, I don't get to see all that much. Anyway, yeah, I got like 4 more years in, and then I'll try to retire, move back to Port Edwards, and live at least half the year with Amy and in port, and the other half she demands that we go someplace warm during the winter. So we'll figure out where we're gonna go for that. So my parents and I were talking about you the other day, and when I was talking to them, I said, "There's always every time I hear your name, there's like three main stories that I always think of, and I'll always every time I hear your name, I'll always think of these three things. And the first thing is, I remember back when we were younger, our family's doing quote unquote home church, which basically meant we did like I guess probably like a 10-minute Bible study or a Bible reading, like out on the beach, and then it was like, release the beasts, and all the kids went running in all different directions, and we're doing what kids do, and we had the boat out there, and it was glass and whatnot, but what I most remember about it is watching you water ski or getting up water skiing, and I couldn't believe that somebody could have that much water in their face and still hang on to the rope. I mean, I remember us like going out there, my dad would have me as the spotter, and he'd say, "Hey Rob, you need to get in the front seat. We're gonna have to get as much power as we can because he's a big guy and we only got a 50 horsepower engine." And I look back and I just see the tiny, well, it wasn't a tiny, it was a normal orange life vest around your neck. And I mean, but it looked tiny on you, and I remember just watching you, and when you say hit it, we would drag you probably, I'd say between 100 and 200 yards. It was a full drag with water just going in your face the whole time until that tiny boat would be able to get you up, and you just powered through it. And I remember thinking as a kid, I'm like, I cannot believe he is still holding onto the rope. And then once we got up, I mean, everything was good. The boat would be able to pick up some pace. You'd be able to get some good cuts in and whatnot. But I'll always remember that. Like that was, we laughed. I was talking to my mom and dad, and I'll always remember that. That's like one of my most vivid memories of growing up with you. The second memory I always think of is when you and my dad and Dr. O'Leary bought the huge amount of logs in your backyard. You decided you guys were gonna be lumberjacks for fall or something, and you had all of us kids out there. And I remember you guys, you had all your brand new gloves and your chainsaws, and we had the splitter, and I think we got maybe, I don't know, maybe a tenth to maybe 10% or 15% of that huge pile done. And we called it a day, and then that pile never really moved as far as I remember. I remember stacking a bunch of it and then never really getting back together all that much. Later on, I talked to my dad, and years later, and he said that, I guess he said he hired Steve Bornbach to chop the rest. But I'll always remember that, like going out there and being all pumped up. We were going to chop this huge pile of logs, and we made it about 10-15% of the way through. But anyway, the third memory I'll always have, like every time I hear your name, will be the time that we were over at your house roasting marshmallows, and we started hearing sirens, and the Stellmacher's house was on fire, and I don't remember who all was there. I just remember we were at your house, and all the dads ran over there to help to try to get stuff. And I remember by the time the kids got there, you guys were pulling stuff out of their garage, if I remember correctly. And I remember one of the moms like realizing that a bunch of the kids still had marshmallow sticks, and we're all standing around the Stellmacher's house that was like burning down, and people telling us to go back to the, put the sticks down, like go back to the fire, and just, and when I tell it to people who don't know us, I mean, of course I got my style at telling it, but they think that's the funniest thing they've ever heard of, like a bunch of kids showing up with marshmallows. I don't know if any kids had marshmallows on the sticks. I'm sure that the kids had sticks though. I'm positive we did, because I do remember somebody telling us like, hey, you can't put those marshmallow sticks over there. And I'll always remember that too. Well, I'll be back in November, and hopefully you're feeling up to it. Maybe I'll be able to stop by and say hi. In the meantime, I hope you have a good day. Talk to you later.
Kevin O'Leary here. When I think of Mr. Gilbert, I think of an amazing, godly man eating Gardettos, drinking a non-alcoholic O'Doul's, wearing his number 93 Gilbert Brown jersey, jumping up and down and yelling at the TV during a Packer game in my parents' basement like a wild man with the Doc O's. True, pure passion and loyalty for the green and gold out of that crew. And I remember seeing a little tear come down Mr. Gilbert's face when Brett Favre brought home the Lombardi Trophy that one year back to Green Bay. I love that. I have memories of incredible weekends at Fort Wilderness, in the kitchen washing dishes with our dads. Usually turned into a full-out water fight by the end of the night, but those were the cleanest dishes I think they've ever seen. And then the memories of Fort Wilderness ice skating and tubing down the big snow tubing hill and getting lost during cross-country skiing in those trails. Man, I don't know how we made it back to the camp, but we did. We just trusted our parents, and my dad and Mr. Gilbert would get us back. The memories of sail races at Barnum Bay Marina on Brace Yourself and Mr. Gilbert's Flying Scott taught me teamwork and the true meaning of coming about. He was an awesome and fair football ref. I'll never forget when he kicked out one of my teammates during a 9th grade football game because he swore. I respect that a lot right now, and I just love how that was the right thing to do, and how Mr. Gilbert stood up for what he believed in and was a godly man and did what was right. I can honestly say I've never heard a swear word come out of his mouth, and I love that about him. He was a talented ref, and I know that was his reputation throughout the city. I love how Mr. and Mrs. Gilbert loved the 4th of July, and how they always knew how to throw the greatest parties celebrating it. Backyard relay races and barbecues, and then how we would all get down to the river and save our spots on blankets for the fireworks. Those are the greatest memories. I have memories of wondering how in the world my dad and Mr. Gilbert chose which wax to put on our cross-country skis during the winter, depending on the weather and the temperature. Never made sense to me, but somehow they had a rhyme or reason to it, and still a mystery, but it always worked. I just trusted them. And I love how Mr. Gilbert would race home, and because he was obsessed with my mom's hot cocoa, and how he would make it and drink it out of his special blue cup, savoring every sip. I have a common obsession with Mr. Gilbert: Rocky Rococo pizza. Oh man, that was the best pizza. And those nights of going out with the Gilberts to Rocky's and stuffing our faces with Rocky's pizza. I never knew and understood why Greg would walk over to Hardee's and get a hamburger and a bunch of fries and like 100 ketchup packets and pass up on the Rocky's pizza, but that's what he did. Those are great memories. With the O'Connors, the Congers, the Seawarts, and the Gilberts. Awesome families. And Mr. Gilbert, you were one of the ringleaders. Thank you for all the great memories. Most importantly, I respect Mr. Gilbert's faith and love for Jesus, and how he lives his life and how he loves on others and always has a smile on his face. It's a true example of a godly man. Probably the best memory, though, that I will always cherish and have is the way and how much of a good friend he is to my dad. I know that my dad loves him and respects him with all his heart, and I can say that I do too, Mr. Gilbert. Love you. Go Pack.
Hey, Mr. Gilbert. I wanted to share a story about you. One of my memories. I have a lot of memories of growing up just down the road. Lots of memories. You know how much time I spent at your house. So, first of all, thanks for letting me and Greg, whatever ridiculous obsession we have with digging holes all over your property. Thank you for letting us give full vent to that. But one of the memories that I wanted to share that it's kind of obscure, but I think back on it honestly quite frequently. There was a time where Greg and I we were doing something with some kind of a rope or a cord of yours that was coiled up in your garage, probably trying to scale some tree or do something ridiculous that probably injured us or had great potential to injure one of us or both of us. And anyways, we got done and we were supposed to be putting it away, and it was a tangled mess on the garage floor. And you were coming home from work, and I think Greg must have had to leave to go to baseball or he had to go to something. And so I was supposed to finish cleaning up, which meant untangling this rope and coiling it back and hanging it up on the garage wall or wherever it was. And it was a mess. And I was having a hard time getting it untangled, but frankly, I wasn't trying very hard. I wasn't putting real good effort into it. And I was going to just weasel out of it. I was going to just leave without doing the job and without telling anyone. And you came around the corner from the side yard where the garage is, right as I was getting on my bike to leave, and you saw the rope lying there in a pile, and you called me on it, and you just said, "Hey, where are you going?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going home," And you said, "Well, you didn't finish the job. You have to clean up from what you guys were playing with." And I gave you some kind of half-hearted excuse about, "Well, I tried. It's really hard to untangle it, and I can't do it." And you played it perfectly. You called me on that BS move of trying to weasel out of doing hard things, but you did it really graciously. And I remember you saying, I think you can do it. It's not easy, but I think you can do it. I think you can untangle it and you can get it coiled up. I'm sure that you can do it. You got to work hard at it, but I know that you can do it. And you just assumed that I was going to do it. And then you just said, if you need any help or you have any questions, I'll be inside. And I remember sitting down and working at that stupid rope and untangling it. It took me a long time, but I finally got it done. And I can't tell you how many times I've thought back to that in dealing with my own kids, because I feel like you sat beautifully in that tension of you weren't going to let me weasel out of it. There was a job to be done, and excuses weren't going to be made. But you didn't make me feel dumb. You didn't shame me. And I think back in the way that I deal with my kids, I think back to that quite a bit. That I want to teach my kids not to shy away from hard things. I want to not let them weasel out with excuses. I don't want to let them convince themselves what they can and can't do even. But I want to do it lovingly and graciously, but firmly. And you did all that stuff. And so you are remembered more than you probably even realize, just from that one little, I'm sure you don't even remember it. You probably don't. But I do. So anyways, just wanted to touch base with you a little bit and let you know that I love you. I appreciate you, and I'm praying for you and for your family.